Hello everyone. I'll wait for some people to get in here. Okay, well, since no one's really in here, I'll just start and I'll see. I was just posting something really quickly. So, I read a lot of books in August, a heck ton, and not all of my NEWTs vlogs are up so far, but some of them are, so you can definitely go check those out. The first 4 are up, and I still have the last one to go up. Chris is gonna edit it. I keep offering to edit it, and he's like, no, I'll get to it, but he doesn't feel like editing it right now, so I don't know how long it will take for it to get up. But it's coming, and I just read a lot of books this month, and I thought it would be fun to go over them. Let me make myself a little bit smaller so you can see these better, or maybe I'll move myself up at the top. There we go. Okay, so I read 40 books this month, which is a lot, and I did this for the NEWTs Readathon, and I'm gonna go over them all. So I set up this little, like, what is it called, spreadsheet of the books that I read, and I'm glad I did, because right before I started, Goodreads started freaking out, and it's like okay again now, but I don't know how long it's gonna be okay for. So I wonder if this is like popping up in my subscription feed, because like nobody's in here, which is really weird. No, it's fine. Okay. Alright, so let's just start with the with the wrap up. Okay, so I'm going in order of the books that I liked the least to the books that I liked the most, and I have tweaked my ratings a little bit according to how I've felt about them after thinking about them for a month to, or like a week to a month-ish. So let's begin. The first book that I'm going to talk about, the book that I hated the very most, is Of Poseidon by Anna Banks, which I can pull these all up. I haven't done so beforehand, but I will do it as I talk about them. So, Of Poseidon by Anna Banks. This is a book about like, sirens, and obviously, and I really, really hated it. It like normalized sexual assault and made it seem like it's okay, and it's like the girl's fault for saying no, and I just had a lot of issues with like consent, and then like making the female character be okay with the assault after a certain amount of time, and like she just had to like get used to it and accept it, and then it was like fine and she liked it. I'm not cool with that, so I really despised this book. Found it super problematic. And yeah, I hated it. It was trash garbage. Please don't read it. I hated it. You can like tell very much that this book was written in like, what is it, 2007? 2012. Oh my gosh, that's a lot newer than I thought it was. Ooh, that's so bad. Hi Libby, hi Bruna. Toronto. Toronto. I knew what you meant. That's how I read it. Okay. Yeah, earlier today I had a subscriber request from Europe saying, I love when you live stream earlier in the afternoon so I can come. So I'm like, okay, like I can do earlier today. I don't know about every week, but today it's fine and it worked out. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Tell Me by Abigail Strom. This is also trash garbage. It's, I don't know if the vlog, did I talk about this in the most recent vlog? Basically, he's a garbage person that I can't understand why anyone's attracted to him. He like looks down on her for reading and like teases her about it and is like, I can't believe you're wasting your time with that. And he like looks down on like any form of reading, and like she gets him to listen to an audiobook at one point that he ends up really enjoying. But when the question is brought up of him like trying another one, he's like, ew, no. I'm never gonna try another one. Like, he's just like very arrogant and very set in his ways and is a tool, and I despise him greatly. So, and she was annoying, and I just hated everything about this. This book made me so mad, and I was just like so frustrated when I read it. Hi Elizabeth. You guys probably already heard about like most of these in my wrap up. So I DNF'd of Poseidon. I couldn't make myself get through it. And then Tell Me by Abigail Strom I did finish. And I wish I didn't because I despised it. The next most hated book that I read. There's a lot of 1 stars this month, which kind of sucks. Oversea. Oh, that's a horrible cover. It's like a horrible quality. Oversea Under Stone by Susan Cooper. This is the first book in the Dark is Rising series, or Dark is Rising sequence, and this is like Arthurian legend coming to fruition in like the 60s. A lot of people mark it as fantasy as their top genre, like it's all marked as fantasy, so I did it as well. I put it as like urban fantasy, but really there's nothing fantastical about this at all. It's all just like, you can see it all coming, like all being like real stuff. It's all like about like people trying to like find like Arthur's treasure and stuff like that just in modern days. But I'm guessing that as the books progress, it actually does turn into a fantasy series, and this is just like setting it up. I hated this. There was literally not an ounce of common sense between any of the characters in this book. Like, they're all so stupid, and I hated every single one of them, and they just made me really mad, and they just kept doing the stupidest things over and over and over, and it's like, it's almost like they wanted to die. They kept putting themselves in situations where it's almost 100% guaranteed that they were going to die. And they kept doing it because they're just morons. Ugh, irritated me. Caitlin had a lot of issues with it as well that I didn't even catch all of them. But she also had like a big deal with that they were like really like racist and horrible as well. So yeah, I don't recommend, and I'm so disappointed because I was very excited about reading it. But it sucked. The next book is What Happens at Con by Kathy Yardley. This is the fourth book in the Fandom Hearts series, and I was so excited about this. I pre-ordered it. I read it like a couple days after it came out. I just like couldn't wait to read this because I really enjoyed the other books in this series, and I was so disappointed. I just like hated all the characters. I hated the situations, and I did go into it more on like my first NEWTs vlog, but like, oh, this book made me so mad. And I just hated Abraham, and like all the characters in this, like all the male characters in this are like super misogynistic and like have really horrible views of women and how they treat them and everything like that. And then it's like as soon as they get a girlfriend, then they're like suddenly wonderful, and we're just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna totally forget all the horrible things you were just saying about women like 5 minutes before you got a girlfriend. It's just like, no, that's not attractive, and I don't appreciate that, and I just don't recommend it. Just read the first three. The first three are great. And we have 2 more 1-star books. If I can open those up. So, after 1-star books, I think it will get a lot more fun. About That Night by Julie James. This is the 3rd book in the FBI/U.S. Attorney series. I really enjoyed the first 2 books, and this book I just despised. I really hated him. She was supposed to be like super smart and awesome, but I just didn't get that from her. And he was just like such a dislikable character, and the things that he like said and thought were just like ugh. And like, so many problems with like gender labels and being like men can't have emotions, and like men are like weak and horrible if they're like if they're attracted to women for more than just their bodies. Like if you like a woman because she's intelligent, then you're just like pathetic and such like a horrible excuse for a man. And just like, oh my goodness, this book made me so mad. So mad. The Bride by Julie Garwood. I DNF'd the last one. I DNF'd this one as well. Again, this is another one where we're like being told that the female character is like really smart and awesome and like super like competent and all this stuff, but she's not, and she keeps doing dumb stuff, and it's like super rapey, and it is like very much like a bodice ripper, and she's like forced into marriage with him, and he like forces her into the wedding bed with him, and that she's just like not comfortable with, and she like explicitly tells him like, I'm not ready for this, and he's like, too bad. And it made me very mad, and everyone seems to love it except for me, and I don't know what's up with that, because it was trash. So those are all my 1-star books that I read this month. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry to hit the mic. So I did DNF those 2, and then I have a couple 1.5-star books. Hi, Elizabeth. I'm going over all the garbage books that I read this month, so that hopefully we can talk about the good books that I read this month. So these are the books that I rated like 1.5 stars. Case of the Spindle by Nancy Campbell Allen. This is the 2nd book in the steampunk, what is it called? Steampunk Proper Romance series. So these are clean romances. But they're garbage. The first book was okay. I gave it 3 stars. I did like it, but it didn't really do anything like spectacular. It was just like a fun Beauty and the Beast retelling. This is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and it was stupid. Yeah, 40 books. But some of them are DNFs. So it was 36 that weren't DNFs, and then a couple of those were like graphic novels and children's books. So, yeah. I don't know what mimic is. Is that how you say that? Reading 1-star books is the worst. I mean, occasionally it can be like entertaining or fun to like just hate read a book, but it's also very draining. This book, so basically I had like big issues with him like telling her what to do and like taking charge of her. And again, she's supposed to be like this like feisty female who doesn't like take crap from people and does what she wants and like runs a business and all this stuff. And then he like basically takes over her life and tells her what she's allowed to do, and like she entrusts him with like a like really massive secret of hers, the fact that she's like completely vulnerable for 6 hours every night as she like falls into this like sleeping curse, which is another thing. Like, I'm fine with vampires and werewolves and whatever's in here. I don't think there's vampires, but there's like shapeshifters and stuff like that. But it just doesn't feel like witches belong in this world. But all of a sudden there is like a legitimate curse on her, which I thought they would do something like interesting involved with like the steampunk element of this book with that. But instead they're just like, oh, magic, curse. But everything else is just like steampunk with werewolves. But just like a random curse. I was like, what? No, I was hoping they would do something more like ingenious than that. And they didn't. And then it's... She like tells him that she like falls asleep every night for 6 hours. She tells him that. And then when it happens, he like flips out and he's like, oh my gosh, is she dead? Blah, blah, blah. And then he ends up telling everyone. She like tells him like, this is like, I don't want anyone to know because she doesn't want to like get raped or die in her sleep because she can't protect herself. And so then he proceeds to tell everyone on his ship, like the 5 other people on his ship, about her secret. And then she's just like, okay, yeah, you were right. I should have told them anyway. And I was just like, no, I can't do it anymore. I'm just sick of this. And they were stupid, and I hated them, and everything about this was horrible. The Woman in the Window. Woman in the Window. Woman in the Window. Is that by Finn? Is that what that book is? I haven't read it. I think Chris read it. I think he gave it 2 stars. He didn't like it, yeah. If that's the one that I'm thinking of. That sounds creepy. Yeah, I don't watch horror movies because I'm a wuss. I don't like Tessa Dare's writing, or characters, or plots. I don't want to say I don't like Tessa Dare because I'm sure she's a lovely person, but I don't like her books. Hi, Sarah. I'm glad you could make it. Yeah, I said Finn. Didn't I say Finn? I said, is that by Finn? I meant as a last name. I couldn't remember what the first names was. Yeah, I know which book you're talking about. It has like the window blinds on it that are like being pulled down with like the letters showing through. The cover of that book I think is really cool. I hadn't really looked at it before like 2 days ago, and then I was looking at it and I was like, that's a really interesting cover design. But Chris read that back in Sin. Oh, no, Finn. Okay. Okay, that is the book I was thinking of. Yeah. Chris read that in June when we were down at his parents' house, and he said that the writing was terrible and that he's so sick of these characters because they're in every book. Hi, Keisha. And it was absurd, though. My sister lives in Utah, and so Utah basically, their overdrive is like the whole state. Utah is huge. It's the whole state shares the same overdrive, and like there are their own libraries within it, but it's all through the same system. So I put this book on hold, and I was like maybe like the 6th person in line or the 10th person in line when I put it on hold, and there was 1 copy. I looked back at it like 3 days later, there were 50 people on hold for it. And then it just kept building and building and building. I think there's still over a 6-month wait for this, and they now have like 7 copies of this book. There were just so many people who are that excited about reading this book, and it's garbage. And I'm like, oh no, don't read it. It's not worth it. Don't read it. But it's, yeah, I really didn't like it. And it was just unengaging and horrible. So I don't recommend, but everyone loves it. Garbage. There's probably better books to read. Elizabeth. There's like 5 Elizabeths in here. Baker's Magic by Diane Zaller. I was so excited about reading this. I have been wanting to read her books for ages. I've owned a couple of her books for like 4 years now, like since I lived in California, so it's been a while. And I was really excited to read this. I think the storyline, I think the idea of this book is really interesting. It's like, in the first part of this book, like the first like maybe third of this book is really charming. It's just like her cooking and baking, and it's adorable. So it's not cooking, it's all baking. It's just about her baking, and it's adorable, and it's so sweet, and it's so just like heartwarming. And it's this world where there's no trees left in this country. All the trees have been chopped down, and there's literally one tree left. So imagine like baking without like nuts or without fruit or all of these things that grow on trees, and maple syrup and all this stuff they can't get. And they've never even seen it in like 50 years or something. And so it's like very fascinating, and I think it's such an interesting idea, but the plot was horrible. She's really manipulative. She's such a brat. She's like such an unlikable character, and it just genuinely made me so upset. And I just feel like this book was just like setting like a bad example to children who might be reading this, who are like, yeah, that's how I should treat my friends, not trust them and trick them into doing stuff for me because I don't trust them. And I'm like, no, these people really care about you and love you. Why do you continue to not trust them? I just thought it was garbo, and I'm so sad, and I'm really hoping that I like her other books better. Oh, I really didn't like this one. Let's see. Like, what do people say about it? It's just like, I don't know. And then it almost felt like there was like a little bit of like a love triangle, even though she's much younger than the boy that it sort of feels like that is with her. And like literally his like, the guy, his sisters like even tease him about like, oh, is that your girlfriend? Blah, blah, blah. And then it just like felt like uncomfortable and weird because there was like such an age gap. There was like at least like a 4-year age gap, probably closer to 6 years. And it was just like really weird. And I don't know. I just didn't like anything about this book past like the 1/3 mark. It just like got worse and worse and worse, and I was like, how is this so bad? And the plot was just absurd, and I couldn't figure out like what time this was supposed to be set in. Like a lot of like fantasy like pull from different eras, or this era if this had happened or whatever. I couldn't tell because it was like there's no trees and there's like this and that, but then there's like snow globes, and I don't know, it just felt weird. It felt like both like 1200s, 1300s mixed with like 1900s. It was bizarre, and I didn't enjoy it. Yeah, I didn't like it. And I also read Sparkle Witch by Helen Harper. This is the 3.5 in the Lazy Girl's Guide to Magic series. This was just like a little Christmas novella, and I did not enjoy this book. It just felt so pointless. Hi, Lizzie. Did you get home from church? It was just like, if you read the first 3 books and you really liked them and you were like, oh, I can read the Christmas novella this Christmas, don't. It's not worth it. It literally made me like these characters less, which I really like the characters in these books. I think they're so fun and wonderful. It made me like them less and made me annoyed, and it's just like everything about this was just so pointless. There was no need for this to exist. If you're gonna write another book of the series, just write another book of the series. If you're not, then don't, because nobody needs this. in my opinion. A lot of people really loved this, apparently. Everyone else loved it, but I just thought it was useless. I wonder if I can, like, see why other people hated it. The 5 other people that hated it. Nobody's written a review on it. The 40 other people that disliked it. Boring fluff. It didn't add anything to the series. Not captivating. Too silly. Too short. Okay, so basically what I think. Church and then other stuff. Nice. So those are all the complete garbage, horrible trash books that I read, which was 9 books. I hated 9 books, and 4 of those I DNF'd. Oh my goodness. You went to BookNet Fest. That's so fun. I'm jealous. Was it amazing? Okay. Oops. Okay. So the next book that I read. It was amazing. Good. Hatter M. Mad with Wonder, Volume 2. The second book in the series. This is the companion series to the Looking Glass Wars by Frank Beddor, and those are wonderful. That's a really, really solid Alice in Wonderland retelling if you want a fun, imaginative, super cool, my favorite rendition of Hatter, the Mad Hatter ever. If you please read it, they're wonderful if you're interested. This graphic novel series, I really liked the first one. I really didn't care about for the second one. It just like felt like super out of place. It didn't seemed to like fit the tone, and I was just really bored and frustrated with it, and I really liked some parts and really hated other parts. So I settled on like a 2-star rating for this. I don't know. I didn't like it, but I will continue on and see if it gets better again. Because I do love Hatter. Hatter Madigan is the best. Yeah, just meh. Just meh. That's a lot of books to hate in a month. Yeah, I don't know. I think the saddest thing about it is that I was really excited about this one. 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 I was pretty excited about this. I was like, they were all books that I was really looking forward to, except for this one and this one, which I was pretty sure I wasn't going to like, and I didn't. I had really high hopes for the rest of them. And like super high hopes for a lot of them. And they were all just like garbage. And then this is like my last like 2-star book. Sorry, what else? I feel like I go back and forth on DNFing stuff. I didn't DNF as many books as I would normally. I did push through more books. Most of these books that I didn't DNF, I would have if it wasn't for the readathon. But I really wanted to like say that I'd completed 36 books, so I forced myself through some of these, but I definitely do DNF more frequently and with more confidence. And I don't ever regret DNFing as well. I'm always like, oh, but I should keep like pushing and seeing if it gets better. But like whenever I do DNF a book, I never regret it. I never feel like, oh, I should go back and finish that. Like I never feel that. I just like, it's not worth my time. It's not worth my time. At all. So, I have 2 more disappointing books. This is one of them. Born to be Wild by Eloisa James. This is the 3rd book in the Wilds of Lindo Castle series. I really enjoyed the first 2. I especially liked the 3rd one, but they're almost getting repetitive at this point. Like the issues that I had with the 2nd book are the same issues that I had with this book. Like the characters, the male characters just seem far too similar. And also Eloisa James is like super, super, super into, and you'll see this in all of her books for the most part, like her Desperate Duchesses, American Duchess, like all of them. All of her female characters are like insanely into fashion. Like so much. And it can be really interesting because especially with like her Desperate Duchesses series and stuff, like it's set like 1780s or whatever. Like it's older historical romance. Like most of them are like around 12, like 1812, 1815, 1820, around there more. But since this is pre, it's still like they still have like the panniers and like the like giant wigs and powdered hair and all that stuff. Like they still had a lot more like elaborate fashion before it continued to like demure down into the Regency era. And so it's really interesting because like her books very much like describe all these fashions, and like the way she's describing the men like dressing and stuff, and their like very fancy clothes and like even like their beauty spots and stuff like that is like not what we would have our ideal of beauty now. And like normally in historical fiction coming out now, you see like the big rugged men and all this stuff. And she still, like, she sort of mixes that in, but she also very much stays true to, like, the fashions of the era, and I think it's really interesting. But it can get kind of boring, too, because I don't care about clothing from that time period that much. Like, not enough that I want to, like, hear them talk about, like, different types of fabric for, like, 20 pages. Like, it gets boring. And that's how I kind of felt with this one. Like, all of her characters, all of her female characters seem to be, like, fashionistas. But, like, this one especially, she's very much into, like, fabrics and sewing and designing. And she ends up designing clothes for, like, somebody's, like re-entering society or something, like she does, and that's like very much a big thing of hers. And like at first he like doesn't totally support it, but then he does and stuff like that, and it's like it's great. And it's especially it's especially interesting to see a female who is of the aristocracy in historical fiction of this time period with technically building a career in like fashion design. It's like super fascinating, but I also couldn't care less what her dress is made out of. And Eloisa James cares so much. If you follow her on Instagram, if you follow her on Twitter, she's always like posting pictures of like clothing of that time period, and she's like so into it, and that's awesome. But it gets boring. And that's how I also felt about this. Like, besides having problems with the hero, besides having problems with this and that, it also just got like very boring. So that's how I feel about this. Yeah, it can definitely feel like that, Sarah. And it's like, it's in there for a reason, though. She's not just doing it, like, necessarily just because. It's like, not that it doesn't fit at all. It really does fit into her character's personalities. It just gets obnoxious. I'm sorry, Eloisa. I love you. You're wonderful. You're incredible, but sometimes your character is a little too enthusiastic about their clothing. Anyway, and it's like she does like put the research in though as well. It's not like so many of them are so like historically inaccurate that it's just painful to read. You're like, I can't read this because it's so inaccurate, and that's kind of how I feel about Tessa Dare. But yeah, this one just didn't do it for me. And then the last book that like I was genuinely like disappointed by this month, which y'all don't kill me, okay? Cinder by Marissa Mayer. Mayer. Why am I struggling with this now? It's not like I haven't heard a million people say it on BookTube over the past like 5 years. I was disappointed by this book. There are aspects that I really enjoyed, aspects that I found like super imaginative, aspects that I thought were like very interesting, but overall I was very disappointed. And I'm so sad. And if it hadn't like been built up so much, and if everybody didn't like claim this is like the best retelling ever, etc., I probably wouldn't have been as disappointed. But I mean, and don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed it, and there were still parts of it I really enjoyed, but overall, I felt parts of it were very simplistic, a lot of it was very unrealistic, things just felt very, like, stilted and odd, like, I don't want to give spoilers at all, but, like, something happens, like, fairly close to the end, probably, like, I don't know, 3/5 of the way through, that I thought was pretty, like, upsetting and traumatizing, and it didn't seem to phase, like, Cinder at all. Like, she's, like, maybe affected for, like, 2 pages, and then, like, totally, like, never mentions it again. Like, I was just, like, their emotions didn't feel real, and I felt like the last, like, half of the book, I was just so done with it. Like, I thought it could have been so much better, and I thought a lot of the things were very, like, ridiculous, and I saw the ending coming from, like, a mile off, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know, disappointed. I just, like, it makes me want to, like, make everyone who likes this book to read, like, good retellings. I'm like, please go read some Megan Morrison. Please go read some Naomi Novik. Please go read some Gail Carson Levine. Please go read some, or some other good, really good fairy tale retellings. Please go read some Eloisa James. Go read some Eloisa James if you want, like, fun, engaging, great fairy tale retellings. Yeah, it was weak, and it was also very, like, I don't know. I was just, like, mostly disappointed. So I give it 2.5 stars. This, like, felt right in the middle for me. Like, I really liked the first half, I really didn't like the second half. That's true. But I feel like a lot of other things and other books also does that. Like, that's seeing how this set of people were treated was, like, nothing I haven't seen, like, 50 other times in other books. I don't know. I will continue on and, like, read the rest of the series. Even if I hated all the books, I would still read them all, but I definitely don't think it's as good as everybody says it is. But I finally read it. It's only been on my Goodreads since September 13th of 2013. Only been on there for 5 years. It's fine. Okay. Yay. Now we're getting into the positive books. The books that I actually did like. Really quickly, while people are here. So if you look... Hi, Melody. Well, good. While you're here, Melody, if you look in the description of this video, it says, like, help me choose what to read. So I ended up putting something together that's, like, a little bit of, like, a poll, and you can, like, copy the links in the poll. And I wanted to get your guys's, like, answers of... I've been struggling with, like, what I've been reading recently, and I am in a bit of a slump right now. So I want you guys to help if you feel like it, if there's something that you're like, man, I really want her to read this, something that you think I should read. So you don't have to fill out all of these, but if you want to, I would like for you to choose one book off of my Goodreads want to read shelf, which would be just, like, my primary want to read. One book off of my unread books on my Goodreads, any TBR shelf, like 1 through 5, like, so want to read, physical to read 2, 3, 4, 5. You could choose off of the fairy tale one as well. Don't choose off the sequels though, because those are sequels to sequels. Or I also did make one, and I linked it right here. All the books on my Goodreads to read shelves under one list, which is just under here under like TBR all. And there's like 2,000 books on there. This isn't taking forever to load. But basically, it's just like if you go through there, if there's anything that you think I should read off of there, just choose one of those. One book on my Goodreads that I've read prior to 2016, so either books without a read date on them at all, or books that I read like in 2015 or earlier, that, or another TBR book, if there's like another TBR book that you think I'd rather read, just if you want like an updated opinion on a book or whatever. I think it'd be fascinating, like if I hated a book or if I loved a book or whatever, see if I would still like it now, and you would like to hear that. A book that you want me to read, it doesn't have to be on my Goodreads, but I will use my discretion in special cases. Like, there are certain books that I will not read, period, ever. A la 50 Shades of Grey or something like that. Like, I won't read that book no matter what, but you can put a book on there and I'll consider it for sure. And then, oh my gosh, I said never read. I meant to say ever read. Let me change that really quickly. Favorite book that you've ever read. Just like one of your all-time favorite books, and then I can like see like what y'all are loving, and maybe I'll want to pick one of those up. And I just thought it'd be fun, and then I can have like a place for that I can have some stuff that y'all are saying, and I'll be able to choose some books. I think it'd be fun to like split these all up. Like, put all of your choices in, like, a week or so. Put them in, like, a little TBR jar. And, like, when I'm in the mood, like, pull one out or something. Anyway. You can... Okay, I'm done. I'm done with my spiel melody. But, thanks. I hope you do it later. You're using random number generator. Yeah, I've done that before as well, Elizabeth. It's so fun. It really is. And I was doing that for a while, I think last year maybe, or maybe it was the year before, where I think it was last year, where I was choosing a new one every week, and then I needed to read that book within the next 2 months, and I would just like add it to my TBR, and it was making me get to a lot of books that I wouldn't have picked up otherwise, but I also noticed that I was hating or disliking every book that I was reading because of that. So, like, I decided to stop it because it wasn't an enjoyable experience, but it was, like, very interesting and fun. But I wasn't enjoying the books. Anyway, so if you guys want to respond to these, I think it'd be really fun and awesome. So here's a link to, the first link is just to my primary to read shelf, a book that a list that has all of them on them, and then all my read books, just sort it and go backwards until 2015. And here's the TBR all. So you can sort this by however you want. You can go to not to stats. You can go to settings and add in other things that you want to see. So like if you want to see like your read stuff or whatever, like you can add other things. Date published. I usually do date publish on date publish edition, and like you can do other things and like sort them by that. And you can also go to my stats. So if you're like, oh, I want to make her read a book that she hasn't read since like 2013, go to that and then like look at those books, or go to that and look at my books from 2014 that I read, and like make sure that I haven't reread them. Just like click on them. So like with Landline by Rainbow Rowell, if you click on it and if you go to my Goodreads or whatever, you can see I read it in 2018 and 2014. So, I mean, if you accidentally like duplicate a book or whatever, that's fine. It's not a huge deal. It's basically the priority of when I plan to get to them. So, like, the want to read shelf is pretty much anything that I would be okay with picking up now. Like, besides just being a mood reader, I'm fine with reading anything on the shelf. So, like, something I might not be in the mood for. Like, maybe I'm not in the mood for that super depressing book. But, like, normally, like, maybe tomorrow I would be fine with it. So, all things that I'm fine with reading right now. These are books that I'm fine with reading right now that are physical books. And I split them off so that, like, just because I don't read physical books as much. And then just like descending in how likely I am to read them, and then all the fairy tale books, and then sequels of sequels, because I needed to put myself in check of starting so many series. Lizzie, did you miss my whole spiel about my little survey thingy that I'm making you guys fill out? Let me know, because I can go over it again, or maybe you'll want to go back and watch it, because I think it's really fun, and I'm excited about it, and I hope you guys decide to fill it out. You missed it? Okay. Basically, I thought it would be fun if you guys would be willing to fill out this little thing for me and give me book recommendations. And that's basically what it is. The link is in the description. And yeah. I thought it would be fun. So if you guys feel like it, you can do it. It is very organized, but it's the only way I could deal with it without having like major anxiety. Because I was just getting so anxious. Like if you add these all up, that's 900, 300, so that's 1,000, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. So that's 1,800 books that I had on my to-read shelf. And I couldn't even think looking at that, where it's like 180, yeah, it's still a lot of books, but like I can think about 180 books. Like I can read 180 books in like 6 months. So that's not really like that daunting. Whereas like the thought of reading 1,800, which would take me, let's say I reading 200 books a year, let's say, because some of them are longer or whatever. That would take me so long. What is that? 9 years it would take me, and that's including not reading any new books, anything like that or whatever. So I had to split it up. Yeah. And it's like the books that are on TBR 5, I'm more likely to not get to until like 5 years from now or whatever. And I would really like to go through these again and just like really sit down and like reorganize them and make sure that they are in the right spots. But for now, I know that the books that I and the want to read are like what I can focus on. And I have been whittling that down. And I would like to get that down to like maybe 100. I think that would be awesome, and just like focus on those 100 books. I also did something where I made this on TBR of longest, and that includes fairy tales and sequels. That's everything. Because, oh, I didn't want to... that's fine. Haha. Your street flooded and you had to go take pictures of it. Oh dear. That's just the pace that I'm on right now, Lizzie. Last year I only read 200 books, but this year I've read like 270-ish. But that includes DNFs and picture books, so it just depends. There was once this website that made the math for you to see how long it would take to read all your TBR. You got 4 years. Bruna, I mean, no offense, but I feel like that's kind of unrealistic. I feel like it would definitely be more than 4 years. Just think how long it would take for you to read all your Agatha Christie. But I did do this on TBR longest just because at the beginning of this year, because I thought it would be interesting to like look back at the end of the year and see these are all the books that I read off of my list that I had on my list at the beginning of the year. So not like new books that I added to my TBR, not like brand new releases or new books that I found out about or sequels to series that I hadn't started yet or whatever. Just like books that were already on my TBR, and so far I have like 75 books that I've read off of that, which I feel like is not too bad. Anyway, and I think I might have accidentally like taken some books off of this list before realizing. Anyway. 20 years? Oh jeez. Just get out of your reading slump. I know, easier said than done, but... And that's really why I split my TBR up, is so that, like, I could add the books in as I went to, like, these as well. And it's just, like, it's not daunting. 180 books is not daunting to me now. And even 500 books isn't daunting to me now. Because, like, what's a year and a half of your life? Or 2 years? Like, not a big deal at all. Where it's, like, 1,800 is, like, ridiculous. And last year is the first year that my reading has just gotten higher and higher through the years. So, like, 2 years ago, it was 160. The year before that was, like, 50. Like, it's definitely gotten higher and higher. And I don't see it slowing down that much. Like, maybe I'll go back to, like, maybe 200, but I don't really see myself reading less than 200 books in a year in the foreseeable future, just because, like, with speeding audiobooks up and my love of children's literature growing and stuff like that, like, I don't see that happening. Anyway. I will try your horror, Elizabeth, but I cannot guarantee that I will not DNF it. I probably will, but I will try it until I feel like dying and crying, and then I might stop if it scares me to death. Okay, let's continue on. Next book is Box of Frogs by Helen Harper. This is by the same person that writes The Lazy Girl's Guide to Magic. So fun. This one was super weird. I definitely didn't like it as much as her other series, but it was enjoyable. It was just like, she reminded me almost of like a Sophie Kinsella character, where they're just like, they're so different from me. Then, like, I cannot relate to any emotions that they're having, any feelings that they're having, any, like, brain processing that they're doing, like, anything. I can't relate to anything about this character, but it's, like, very fun to watch them from the outside and be like, you're crazy, but sure. Just, like, the things that she did and the way that she processed and everything, I'm just like, I do not understand you at all. You so weird, but it was enjoyable. It was weird. I liked it. That's pretty much how I feel about them. Next book on my list is Suddenly You by Lisa Kleypas. So this is a standalone by her, which is nice because so many books by her are parts of series. You didn't DNF any. I can't. I DNF so much. I really need to fill out one of Brock's spreadsheets, and, like, I haven't done it at all this year, and I am going to really regret that at the end of this year, but I'd like to see, like, the ratio of DNF'd books to non-DNF'd books. Suddenly You by Lisa Kleypas. This is another one about, like, a working woman, which is really fun. She's an author, and she's getting a little bit up there in years. I think she just turned 30, and she's, like, a spinster, and she's, like, totally cool with that, but then she's like, well, even though being a spinster is, like, fine, she's like, I still want to, like, find out what other stuff is about, so she ends up hiring a male escort, but then a mix-up happens, and, like, a publisher, the guy who runs, like, a publishing house, like, ends up coming to her house instead, and it just, like, kind of goes from there. And it was fun. I liked it. Like, the first half is definitely better than, like, the last 2 hours of this book. I was just kind of like, okay, I'm ready for this book to have ended already. It just didn't need to be there, and it definitely brought down my enjoyment of it, because I was like, all of this just doesn't need to be here. It just stretched out the story for no reason. And I also really hate books where it changes, like, the integrity of the character, where it's like, through this whole book, I can't just have the characters be saying, I don't want kids, I don't like kids, I don't want a family, and then just, like, all of a sudden, for no reason, being like, okay, yeah, I want kids, I'm fine with kids, let's do this, in, like, such a short period of time, that no, like, acclimating it or anything, like, just, like, completely changing it. And I feel like it's only there for women who want kids, but whose husbands don't, and it's, like, almost just, like, that, it's, like, the same reason you read any, like, romance or whatever, is to, like, make you feel, like, happy or whatever, and I feel like that's what that's for. But whereas, like, I'm somebody who doesn't want kids right now, it just, like, makes me really sad that he, like, changed his morals about that and, like, changed his ideas about that so easily just because she wanted it. I just wasn't down for that, but it was fine. Yeah, it is fine to DNF books. DNFing books is the best. I love DNFing books. Yeah, for a book that you loved that I haven't read yet, or a book that you loved that I haven't either read in a long time, or that I hated maybe in the past. Just like one of your favorite books that you would like me to read. So the other one, I guess, would be more like, what is a book? I guess the difference between these two, between a book that you want me to read and your favorite book, would be just kind of like if I was recommending a book to Chris. If I was recommending a book to Chris, I'd be more likely to give him a book that I think that he'll like, that I also really like, versus me giving him a book to read that is my favorite book that I love. There's like a difference between that, and if you know my reading taste enough from like all the hundreds of books that I talk about on here that you've listened to me talk about every week, if you feel like you know my taste, then this one would be more like specifically towards me, like what do you think I should read that would be interesting to me, and it's just like what's your favorite book, and see if I have an interest in it. But you can totally use these both as the same thing. Just do whatever you want. There's no rules here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I guess I didn't explain it very well. That's fine. When do I ever? My next book in enjoyment level would be Rappaccini's Daughter by, what's his name? Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is one of the books that The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter is based on. The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, which is one of my favorite books. And this is one of the books it's based on, so I wanted to read it for that, and I pretty much got out of it what I thought I would, where it's like, I'm glad I read it, I'm glad that this book exists so that we can have Beatrice and The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, but on its own, I just didn't feel it was, like, that engaging. It was just kind of weird, it was too short, it was kind of funky, and very insta-lovey, and a bit absurd, but I'm still glad I read it, and I'm glad it exists, and I did like it. It was just, like, super weird. It was fine. If you love Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, I recommend reading it. Or if you want to read that, I recommend reading it to, like, kind of get the backstory. But it's definitely not necessary, and Theodora Goss definitely flushes out the book enough that you don't need to have read this in order to understand what's going on in Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. Firefighter Dragon by Zoe Chant. This is a book about a firefighter who's a dragon shifter. And it starts off with this girl who is an archaeologist, and she's like sneaking into a dig because she's like afraid of like artifacts being ruined because they're gonna turn them into they're like turning it into like apartment complex or something. They're gonna destroy it. So she sneaks in there and she ends up getting traced by a dragon, and so then she calls 911, and then firefighters show up, but he's secretly a dragon shifter, but she doesn't know, and she's afraid of dragons now, and she didn't even know dragons were a thing because like it's like normal modern world, and it was ridiculous, but it was so fun. It was silly, but it was enjoyable, and I liked it. And like it did have like the fated mates trope. It's super insta-lovey. The whole like book, which is only over 100 pages, it only takes place in like one day. Like, it's absurd, but it's so enjoyable, and I'm definitely gonna read book 2 and see how it goes. I liked it. Realms of Mist and Ash, book 2 in the Feywitch Chronicles by J.S. Malcolm. So I don't know if you guys remember, I read book 1 back, I think in in May, and I really liked book 1 a lot. You would read Firefighter Dragon just for the cover. The reason I read Firefighter Dragon was for the summer romance book bingo Ripped Bodice thing, to read a book with firefighters in it, a romance book with firefighters in it, and the other firefighter book I was going to try to read, I just didn't like, so I switched to this one instead, and I did really end up enjoying it. So this book, Realms of Mist and Ash, I enjoyed the first book earlier this year a lot. I thought it was so funny. I loved the characters. It ended on like a cliffhanger. I was so interested. And I still did like book 2, and I thought it was a good continuation. But I just didn't like it as much as book 1. I didn't think it had as much humor or wit, which makes sense because it is getting more dark as the series goes along. And I don't even want to think about how dark it's going to be by the end of book 5. But I did like it, and I do like it, and I do recommend the series. I just didn't like it as much. You're definitely getting more and more into the world in this one. And let's talk about The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. So this is the first book in the Raven cycle. And I liked it. The thing about this book for me, and I think my enjoyment would have been higher, except for the fact that I just felt like I didn't connect to it at all. Like, I felt very surface level while reading this, where I did enjoy it, and I did think it was very interesting. I thought the characters were interesting, and I did enjoy the experience, but I never really felt like I was fully engaged in the book. And so, like, I'd be listening to it, and then I'd look at my phone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 3 hours into this book. How has nothing happened yet? And how have I not, like... So I would, like, kind of almost, like, zone out while listening to it, but still listening to it, if that makes sense. It was, like, a very, like, ethereal experience reading this book. It was super strange. And I think it did bring down my enjoyment of the book because I never felt like I was fully engaged in the book. You felt the same way. Okay. Okay, good. Oh, I'm so glad I'm not alone in this. So, like, I do want to read book 2, and I am very intrigued, and the plot was quite interesting, and the characters were quite interesting, but I never quite got there. And I just felt like nothing happened, even though quite a bit happened. It was, like, such a weird experience. I'm glad that I'm not alone. Like, apparently everyone feels the same way. And yeah, Chris says that either book 2 or book 3 is his favorite, so I'm excited to continue on, and I'd like to continue on very soon, but because I feel like this is also the kind of book, and I don't feel this very often, but I do feel like it's the kind of book that I'll forget if I don't read the next books quickly. Whereas, like, most books, if I read it, I can wait 2 or 3 years and I can read the next book and I'm fine. Whereas, like, this one, I feel like if I don't read the next book in the next, like, 3 months or so, I'm gonna have to, like, go back and reread this one, which is weird for me. Anyway, I'm gonna go to the restroom and get some more water. I still have a little bit left, but I've drunk most of it. Go to the bathroom, get some more water, and I'll be right back. You want to reread The Raven Boys because you felt like you missed something. You were really confused by the ending. Okay. We'll reread the first book, and then we can read books 2, 3, and 4 together. Think about it. I don't know why I'm putting headphones on. There's no need for me to have headphones on right now. I'm only listening to myself talk after all. Oh, you didn't get past book 1. Oh, well, maybe reread it, and then we can read book 2 together if you want. Before was so abrupt. You just felt like you missed something as well. Maybe everyone should just reread this. Basically, everyone hates the Raven books. I've heard that as well, Elizabeth, that people have liked it more after rereading them. I haven't read it. That's the book that's orange, right? Let's see. Paper Planes. Is it not orange? I thought one of the covers was orange. Maybe I'm thinking of a different book. No, I'm completely thinking of a different book. I don't know what this is. Did it just come? No, it didn't just come out. I have no idea what this is. You've tried like 2 times. Okay. Well, apparently nobody likes the Raven Boys. I mean, I'll add it to a TBR. No idea what this is. Interesting. Okay. Oh, I have a response. Oh, okay. I'm really excited. I'll go through it later. Alright, so let me guys know if you're okay with... I don't know if it says who it's from. Oh my gosh, she's cheating with 4. Okay, well, I'll go with this later. Okay, so next book, Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. It's about freaking gosh darn time that I finally read this freaking book. And I did. And I liked it. Lair of Dreams, the second book in the Diviners series. I really liked the book one in the Diviners when I read it. Back in 2014, right when it came out. I've been waiting for this book until then. And then until now, and then until it came out, and then I never actually got to it, so I finally got to it. I did like it. I felt like it was a little long, a little drawn out, a little almost anticlimactic how it ended, but still enjoyable. Evie was a bit obnoxious, but I still liked it, and I liked the other characters. I liked some of the new characters. I don't love Henry. Henry kind of makes me want to punch him in the face, but I love, oh gosh, what's her name? What's her name? The other girl. The girl that's really good friends with Henry. Not Ling, the other one. Although I do like her. Ling? I don't know her name. What's her name? You know who I'm talking about if you read this. She's in the first book as well. I really liked her, and I liked seeing her development, and I don't know. I did enjoy this. Ling... And it was very sad, too. So, I don't know. I liked it. I think I would like it more on a reread, potentially. I think maybe after I read book 3, maybe I'll go back and read all of them before the 4th book comes out. Is probably what I'll end up doing. And I think I would like it more on a reread. But the thing is, I read the first half like 2 years ago, and then I read the second half now. So I feel like it also was my own fault. Next book, A Duke by Default. Where's that book? A Duke by Default by Alyssa Cole. First thing I'll tell you with this book, do not listen to the audiobook. It's terrible. So this book is set in Scotland. The narrator does not know how to do a Scottish accent whatsoever. Trying to think. So this person, she was saying a lot of things. So she's gonna remove it or whatever, but she said when she was like updating about this book, the things that she was saying. So this this odd Irish, Scottish, Nigerian accent is how she describes the Scottish accent, and I totally agree with that. It sounded Nigerian to me, like it totally does. And her voice is nice, and her American accent is fine, but she can't do a Scottish accent whatsoever. And it's like, maybe don't have a narrator narrate something who can't narrate the accent that they need to narrate. So the narration's horrible, but the story was cute. I liked the story. The only way I got through this book is I listened to it on 3 times speed because I disliked the narrator so much. But she narrated the first book and she was fine in that, but maybe because she didn't have to do a freaking Scottish accent in that one. This one, so this character I feel like is such an interesting character. What is her name? Portia. So Portia's so interesting. She's not the most likable character. She's very much in her own head. She's kind of has a reputation for not being able to finish anything, for getting distracted, for giving up, for like all these things. And for not always being a very good friend, and for being kind of wishy-washy and all these things. Like, she's not a likable character going into it. But she's the reason I read this book. I didn't really care for book 1, but I thought she was such an interesting character because she was so almost like dislikable in that one that I wanted to read this one and see her be redeemed because I thought she was so fascinating. And this book definitely did that. She is so interesting. She's definitely like very sympathetic, and like I can definitely relate to her on a lot of things, and she kind of gets unofficially diagnosed. I'm with, I think it's ADHD, but don't quote me on that. Yeah. So it is ADHD. So she doesn't actually like go and get like officially diagnosed, but it kind of gets brought up that several people are like, I think you have ADHD. And she's like, oh my gosh, that explains why I am the way I am. And it was like very interesting. I don't know if that was like a giant spoiler, but like you can kind of tell that she does. And so like it makes her very interesting to like watch her because she just like is who she is, and like that's just like part of who she is. And so it's like very interesting, like, but her never not having anything to like label that with was like very hard for her growing up. But then like once she was able to like see like, oh, there's like a reason that I am the way I am, it was very interesting. It was like a very interesting thing to like watch. I liked it. It was cute, but don't listen to it. It's much better if you don't listen to it. And I love audiobooks, so that's saying something. Okay, next book. Oh, a fun one. Summer Days and Summer Nights. 12 Summer Romances. So this is a short story collection edited by Stephanie Perkins with a story by her, and these are how my ratings go. This one might be long. Head Scales, Tongues, Tail by Leigh Bardugo. I gave 4 stars. This might even be 4.5. I've thought about this story so much in the past month. I really, really liked this one. I liked it. It was like the perfect start to this collection. It's hard to like give too much of like synopsises about these, so I'm not gonna, unless I think it's important. But like, I feel like this one's kind of fun to go into not knowing anything. Just know it's a little bit supernatural. The End of Love by Nina LaCour. Do I remember what this one is about? Oh, yeah. This is just like about a girl hanging out with some sort of friends, and it was boring and I didn't like it. Last night... Did you say Senegal? should I know this? I don't know. I DNF'd it, and I also DNF'd Sick Pleasures. I just heard really bad things about it, and I thought it wasn't worth my time. But I loved In 90 Minutes, Turn North by Stephanie Perkins. This is a sequel to her story that was in My True Love Gave to Me. And I loved it. It was such a fun follow-up, and it just made me so happy and warm and fuzzy, and I just like adored it. I want to reread this like every summer now. Souvenirs by Tim Fertle. I don't know how to say his name. I hated it. It just like made me really sad. Like, this is this guy's first relationship, and it just sucks, and his boyfriend's trash, and I really, really didn't like it. And it just, like, made me sad because he felt like his boyfriend was good when he was obviously not good. And it just, like, made me disappointed. Inertia by Veronica Roth. This one is also really interesting. It's, like, futuristic, where if somebody's, like, been in, like, an accident and are going into surgery and their chances of survival are, like, extremely low, they can do this thing before the surgery called the last visitation. And so she has like an ex-best friend who she hasn't talked to in a while, and so he asks her to come to his last visitation, and so she does, and it's like them going through like memories together and talking about stuff and like what happened, and it was so interesting, and I really liked it. Love is the Last Resort by John Scovron. This was like a bunch of little love stories mixed into one. It just didn't feel fleshed out enough, and I didn't like any of the characters. Good Luck and Farewell by Brandy Colbert. This one I thought was really cute. It was basically like about like not judging people and not like letting personal experiences get in the way of giving somebody like a chance, and like not being like prejudiced to them right off the start. So like this girl's aunt's girlfriend basically like convinces the aunt to like move across the country, and she's like hates her because of that and doesn't really give her a chance, but then like she's able to see the person through her like brother's like eyes, and it was like very interesting. I liked it, and I thought it was very touching. The Brand New Attraction by Cassandra Clare. I don't know if this is, I don't know, I gave it 1 star. It's probably more like a 1.5. It just wasn't for me. It's like about a circus and like a dark carnival, and it was just like, I really like these last two though. 1,000 Ways This Could All Go Wrong, I thought was, I haven't read anything else by Brandy Colbert. I don't really know who that is. What else have they written? Should I know who that is? Oh, she wrote Finding Yvonne. So I've heard of Finding Yvonne. I don't know any of these other ones though. And she has a book in Toil and Trouble, which I wanted to read like next month maybe. But I don't know. You think I'd like Little and Lion? Okay. You think I wrote Little and Lion? Do you think she wrote Little and Lion? I don't know what you're trying to say. I'll try that one, and I'm definitely going to read this one soon as well. I'm going to move that to my want to read shelf, just like my priority shelf. Anyway, I want to read, I'll read more of her stuff. I ended up really liking it. I should do that in short story collections. If it's multiple authors, I should try other things by them soon. She wrote it. You heard good things about it. Okay, I'll try it. 1,000 Ways This Could All Go Wrong. It was just like a cute contemporary that I just loved. And it makes me really excited to read Jennifer E. Smith's other things. It was just like so like adorable. And The Map of Tiny Perfect Things by Lev Grossman I found super fascinating. It's very like a la Groundhog Day, and it like references, what's it called? Flatland by Abbott, which I have read, and I think that made it more enjoyable as well, like them talking about a book that like I'm experienced with. I thought it was very interesting, and it also made me more excited to read some of Lev Grossman's works. So I think maybe I should make that a thing. Like every book that I give 5 stars to, I think the next year maybe I should try to read another book by that author, if I didn't already like do that anyway. Okay. So the next book, The Sword and the Stone. This one was interesting. So this was a reread for me. I disliked it more than I thought I would, but I still really liked it. I think the first time I read this, I gave it 4 stars, and then on a reread, I gave it 3.5. The first, like, 60% of the story is, like, 5 stars for me. I loved it. I think it's hilarious, engaging. I laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And then, like, the last, like, 40% or 30% was just, like, kind of boring, kind of meh, and blah. So, I was, like, very up in the air about this one. I just think it's really interesting. This book is so much funnier than I thought it was. I mean, everyone knows that Disney like Disney-fies things, that they take a story and change it until it's almost unrecognizable and make it into a Disney movie, whereas like this one, yes, they do that, they do change things, but they also like keep a lot of the story intact, and they keep a lot of the, if not the direct lines from the book, a lot of the feeling of the book and a lot of the character and everything. Like Archimedes is super funny, and he's very similar to like the movie version, and so was like Merlin, and it's like super funky. It's so weird, especially for like, it's a book written in the 40s about a book written about like characters from like, I don't know when Arthur is. I should probably know that. Is he around 500 AD? Between 500 and 1000. I think he's around 500 AD though, or 400. And they're like referencing all these like ridiculous things, and it was so silly. So many of the things that they said and talked about, and it's the same way in the movie where it's like Merlin gets upset in the movie and he goes, "Oh, blow me to Bermuda." And then he goes to Bermuda, and then when he comes back, he's wearing like Bermuda shorts and sunglasses and like all that stuff. And the book did stuff like that too, where he talked about all these things and referenced all these things, and it was just like so funny. And Archimedes was my favorite part, and it was just like so many parts were so enjoyable, but then it got like really boring at the end. It was pretty accurate with 101 Dalmatians, just less misogynistic. Yeah, I'm very hesitant to read 101 Dalmatians because I've heard the book is, like, not great. But, yeah, I don't know, I'm glad I reread it, but I don't see myself rereading the other books in the Once and Future Keen anytime soon. This was a reread for me. And, like, books 2, 3, and 4, I really hated the first time I read, and I don't see that changing, but maybe I will try them in the future, just not right now. I don't care enough right now, but I will definitely, maybe in a few years I'll reread this one and then try the other books again. I just think it's, like, not for me right now is to read the other books. But I did really enjoy this, and it was such a fun experience rereading them. And I never read the Book of Merlin, so I would like to do that as well. And maybe I would like these better now. It wasn't for me at the time when I read them, when I was like 16. It was so fun rereading this though, and it also, like, it reminded me of I can talk about it later, but there was like an experience I had while reading The Hobbit as well that like made me think of this, where it's like, it's almost like these men, T.H. White and Tolkien, are like the first of their era. Like, they are some of the first people writing these like epic fantasies and stuff like that, and since they're like the first people in their genres and stuff, that they can just do whatever they want, and they make references to all these things that like now it would be like totally unacceptable for those references to be there unless you're doing it in a satirical, like an intentionally like very satirical, ridiculous manner, almost like Terry Pratchett, or like they were trying to do with Kill the Farm Boy or whatever. Like, unless you're trying to do that, it's almost like unacceptable now to like throw that humor in, where it's like The Hobbit, he could like do both, and in this one I felt like he tried to do both, even though this is very on the satirical side. It's fascinating, and I'm really glad I reread it. Next is Her Halloween Treat, which was so fun. This is by Tiffany Reyes, and this is the first book in Men at Work series. These are all holiday romances, part of the Blaze line by Harlequin, and I really liked it. It's the perfect time to read it. It's very, very, very smutty, so if you don't want that, tread with caution. But it was just really cute, and like, it is very short. A lot of Blaze books are very short. This one's very short, but since the characters knew each other prior, I felt like it felt like believable-ish. And what I really, really loved about this book, though, was just like the banter. The banter got to me. I laughed and laughed and laughed through this book because it was just everything. Their interactions with each other, her interaction with her brother, her interactions with her parents, her brother with the guy, like the brother with his fiance, her brother's being fiance with her, like all the interactions were just so funny, and I just loved the characters. I'm excited to read the other books, and the other books are Christmas romances, and I think I'm going to read them this Christmas, both of them, because why the heck not? One Hot December and Her Naughty Holiday. These titles, though. The last question is that a favorite book of you read, I think. How did I phrase this? What is your favorite? Oh, did I changed it to ever. It was supposed to be never. I just suck supremely, you guys. I'm sorry. That you... Let's try this. You... Oh, will it not let me edit it? Let me edit it. There we go. That... You... There, that's what it's supposed to be. What's your favorite book that you've ever read? That's what it was supposed to be. You guys, I'm sorry, I suck. Hopefully that makes more sense now. Yeah, a book that you've read that I haven't, or a book that you've read that I haven't read in a while, or that I disliked, or whatever, that you would, that just like a book that you love, and I would like to see if I want to try it, or try it again, or whatever. Or whatever. And finally, in this, I'm going to change my rating right here. I'm a cheater. I'm going to change it to 4 stars, and I'm going to move it up to, here. Okay. So, let's move that. Where's the Adventure Zone? But I'll talk about it right now and tell you why I did that. So, when I read this book, I had not yet listened to the Adventure Zone podcast. So, I read this, I thought it was completely understandable, I thought it was funny and enjoyable and all this stuff. And I thought the art was really cool, and I really enjoyed everything about it. But now I've listened to the Adventure Zone, I've started it, I'm over halfway through what would be the storyline of this book. And like, the fact of like being able to picture what these characters look like, what's happening, like the brother popping in at the top and all this stuff, like, and like giving his thoughts and all these things. It's so funny. I just adored it, and I really, really, really recommend you listen to it and read this. It's just like my enjoyment of this went from a 3-star to a 3.4. Now it's a 3.5. Now it's a 4-star. I can see this becoming a 5-star book for me easily because their podcast is just so funny and so enjoyable. So I think I'm going to reread this in a month or two after I finish this. And I think it will be a 5-star at that point. But it's just like slowly creeping its way up, because the more I listen to of that, the more I'm like, this was so well done and really captures the feel of the Adventure Zone. Please listen to the Adventure Zone. It's great. Your favorite book out of the ones you've read. Oh well. So Sarah, how about you let me know your favorite book just in general, like what you would answer with that if I hadn't phrased it so stupidly, and I'll choose that one instead. Or whatever. You choose. Or you can just message it to me if you want it to be private or something. You can just message it to me on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. It's not thundering here, but it is definitely very gloomy and rainy. Does that mean it's sweeping up here? The third question is... Okay. Third question is... One book on my Goodreads read prior to 2016 that you want an updated opinion on. Or you can also just do another book that you want me to read, either off of my TBR or not off of my TBR, whatever. But I think it would be interesting. I have... So at this point, I have 1,186 books marked as read. Guesstimating, I think I've read around 600 to 650 books in the past 3 years. 2016, 2017, 2018. That's still over 600 books that I've read, or around 600 books that I've read prior to that I haven't read in the past 3 years. And so, like, if you want an updated opinion, like, if I loved a book back then, would I still love it now? Or if I hated a book back then, do you think I should try it again, or whatever? Just, like, a book from way back when, if you think I should read it again. But you don't have to. You don't have to answer all of these either. If you just want to answer, like, 1 or 2, that's fine. Thank you guys so much for doing this, though. I think this is going to be so fun and so interesting. I'm excited to make a little TBR jar of it and stuff. Anyway, next book. That would be Ocean Meets Sky by Terry Fan. So this is a children's book. It's a children's picture book, and this was just adorable. It's a little sad, but it's also, like, very sweet and comforting. I feel like this would be either a good book to read if, like, a grandparent's sick, or maybe a little bit after a grandparent has passed away, because it almost, like, represents how, like, if a loved one dies, if a loved, like, grandfather dies or whatever, that he'll still be there and still watch out for you, and that he'll, like, still, like, he's still, like, there if you believe in that, where, like, his grandfather told him that they would go to the place where the ocean meets the sky, but then his grandfather's gone, but he's still able to go on this adventure and feel, like, protected and safe. And it was, like, very sweet. I enjoyed it. And the illustrations, if nothing else, just pick this up for the beautiful illustrations. They're gorgeous. Okay, good. Melody submitted as well. Does that mean there's 3 responses? Okay, so I'd already seen your responses. Okay, I'll read them. I Wonder Who Wrote the Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. Well, joke's on you, Melody. I was going to read that next month anyway. Chris and I are going on a big, not a big trip, just down to Maryland again. It's a 7-hour drive and the 7 hours back. We should be able to get through all of it on that trip, hopefully. So Chris, he made me promise that I'd listen to it with him. So it's planning on happening next month. Next one would be Cinderella. by Jane Werner Watson. So this came out very shortly after and is based on the Disney Cinderella. It has beautiful illustrations. It does have like a slightly different like color scheme, but it very much follows like the feel of the movie. It was very sweet and adorable, and it was just like, it was charming and delightful. It just didn't, I really just liked the illustrations, and the art style were beautiful. It didn't add too much though. Okay. Sun and Moon, Ice and Snow. This is by Jessica Day George, and this is a retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon. I really liked this one. I don't know if it's one that will like super stick with me, but I thought it was a very well done retelling. I thought she did some dumb stuff at the end, but not right at the end. Some dumb stuff in the middle end, like most characters in retellings of East of the Sun and West of the Moon do. But overall, I thought it was very interesting. I liked the lore. I liked just everything about it. I just thought was very enjoyable, and I just had a good time with it. I don't know, yeah. It's probably closer to like a 3.5 star book now that I'm thinking about it, and my enjoyment level is probably a little bit lower than I initially put it. It might be like closer to being down here, but I still did like it, and I still recommend it as a retelling. The Highwayman by Kerrigan Byrne. This is the first book in the Victorian Rebel series. I liked this one as well. I'm excited to read her other books in the future too, but I just enjoyed just about everything about this. It was fun, it was adventurous, it was another woman in a working position. She works for Scotland Yard, and the fridge is yelling. She works for Scotland Yard and is like very competent. So basically she like basically promises herself to another like little boy when she's a kid, when she's like 5, and she's kind of like kept to it all these years even after he's died. And every time you hear my fridge, you laugh. Well, I'm glad it amuses you. So she's kind of kept to it like after he died, and so now she's calling herself a widow, and she's working in Scotland Yard, and then this guy like kind of like has risen up from like the underground and has like, it's like kind of taking over like the illegal aspects of what's going on in London and stuff, and then he ends up like kidnapping her, and it was a very interesting, and I just enjoyed it. I found it super fun and engaging. It was a good historical romance. I promise. Okay. Next one. Lady Susan. Lady Susan by Jane Austen. I hadn't ever read this before, and it was not what I was expecting. So it's all epistolary, which I knew going in. But Lady Susan is like she's not a likable character, nor is she meant to be, but I really liked her. She's like very like conniving and interesting and controlling, and I just like found this book like really fascinating, and the character's really fascinating. It's very short though, and I feel like I'd get more out of it on a reread, but I can't give anything Jane Austen writes like less than 4 stars, just because her writing is so funny. I laughed so much through this, and it was just like, it's just wonderful and makes me so happy. It is probably my least favorite Jane Austen, maybe higher than like Mansfield Park, but I'm excited to reread it in like a year or so. I really liked it though, and I recommend. My fridge, I think it's, I don't know. At first we thought it was just when it got overheated, but it does it even in the winter. I don't know why it does it, but it's free. Our landlord put it in there. It's just like, whatever. It's not a big deal. Like, it functions fine. It keeps our food fine. And compared to the fridges that we had at the last place, I don't know if you guys remember the fridge that we had at the last place, that, like, it broke, like, 3 times. We had, like, 3 different fridges when we were there. It, like, would stop working all the time and, like, was horrible. And I think it, like, maybe leaked water on the floor. It was just, like, the worst. I hated it so much. Like, this, just yelling, it's okay. Like, sometimes it does it even more. Like, if it is hot, it will do it even more than normal, which is frustrating when you're trying to fall asleep at night and it just goes off, like, every 5 minutes. But normally it's only, like, once every half hour or hour, and that's not a big deal. That was talking really fast. But yeah, it's not a really big deal, and it doesn't really do it more if you, like, leave it open either. Maybe it does a tiny bit, and I think it doesn't like to shut all the way sometimes. But we are very careful about shutting it firmly all the time, and I feel like that makes it squeal less. So I guess it does squeal more if it's overheated, because I think before we didn't shut it all the time, but it just does it all the time now. And The Hobbit by Tolkien. This is so fun. I hadn't read this in probably 10 years, maybe more. I remember the last time I read this, I was at my grandparents' house in their motorhome, sitting on their bed listening to this. I feel like that one was, like, abridged, because it was definitely dramatized. So I feel like it was slightly abridged, but I have read it unabridged as well, because my mom read it to me when I was younger as well. But this book is so funny, and again, it's like these men who were, like, the beginning of their time in this genre. Thank you, Libby. These people are at the beginning of their time in their genre. They can just do whatever they want. Like, my favorite quote out of this book was the quote where they're talking about how golf was invented. And it's just, like, it's so funny and so silly. And it's like, oh, they're in Middle Earth, but yeah, golf is a thing. And I don't know, I just, like, really enjoyed that, like, whimsicalness, but I just enjoyed it so much. Like, I really, really, really liked, like, the first, like, 60% I thought was so funny and so great. And then the last, like, 40% definitely, like, slowed down. And, like, the last, like, 20%, I was just like, okay, I'm kind of ready for this to, like, stop. Like, all the negotiations on the hill and all that, and the mountain and everything. I was just like, okay, can this book be over now? But I did really like it, and it was so fun, and I'm in such the mood to, like, be reading all the rest of these books now. Okay. Now we're getting into the books that I loved. I think it's in this order. Yeah? Okay. So next one. Okay, here we go. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I'm so glad I finally read this. You guys probably remember my vlog, me crying about this, everything. I feel like this is a book that has the potential to become a 5-star read for me, but for some reason it just didn't quite meet that this time. But I really liked it. I really connected to Francie, the main character. I could empathize with her so well, and I just thought it was, like, so fascinating. And I don't know, if you have any interest in reading this, please read it. It was great. I loved it. And I don't know, like, I don't feel like I have, like, the most, like, coherent thoughts on it, because, like, it's not the most interesting book. It's just, like, this girl, a little bit about her parents before she was born, and then just from, like, age, like, 6 to, like, 16. It's not that interesting, but I loved it so much. It was so fascinating. It, like, it very much, like, looks at, like, people not being evil or bad, just people being people, and sometimes they have good qualities and sometimes they have bad qualities. And everybody has like a lot of flaws. Like even her mother, who is technically like less flawed than her father, she didn't feel as loved by, and like stuff like that. It's just like very interesting, and it definitely wasn't like a black and white book at all, and I appreciated that. I just thought it was very interesting, and I really liked it, and I loved Francie. Francie's wonderful. I also loved her aunt who is the floozy or whatever. What is her name? I don't know. I was hoping that my sisters maybe had marked it, but they haven't. Like, marked, like, what that character's name was. Anyway, she was wonderful. The aunt, and her second to last pregnancy, I was laughing so much. It was so funny. That was my favorite part of the whole book. 12 books you adored and 9 you hated. Yes, it was balanced. Sort of. It was balanced. It was very, like, medium. But I did have some books that I loved. But also, there's also a catch with that a little bit that I'll show at the end. The Case of the Bizarre Bouquets by Nancy Springer. This is a 4.5 star book for me. It's maybe, I don't know. I really love the way that this is building up to like the last 3 books. So the first 3 books in this book, it's the 3rd book in the Enola Holmes series by Nancy Springer. The first 3 books are really good. The last 3 books are superb. So it's like, yeah, this book isn't that great, but in the overarching like plot of like what the series does, it's a pretty gosh darn good book. But it itself on its own, without having like, ow, frick. Without having like the later books to like say like, wow, this book is phenomenal and like how good they get, it wouldn't be quite as good. But since I have read them, then I can say this book is wonderful. It does get a bit dramatic, and it's a bit like, that was really convenient in some places, but it was very fun and I enjoyed rereading it. Very feminist historical fiction about Sherlock Holmes' little sister. If you haven't read this yet, please do. Landline by Rainbow Rowell. This was a reread for me as well. I really loved this the first time I read it. I was really afraid I wouldn't love it this time, but I really do. I just think it's so interesting. And again, it's like not these black and white characters. And it's like, it's very interesting because like looking at their relationship, I would be so miserable in their relationship that they have, but I loved it. And I don't know, I just enjoyed everything about it. I enjoyed all like, it's just like from the second I picked this book up, I just adore every second. And I don't know if I don't know if I have most coherent things to say about it, but this is great. And I want to start rereading this like every few Christmases or so, because it just like makes me really happy. And I just like, I always get really sucked in, and I always just end up like enjoying it so much. It's great. 4.5 stars, just like the first time I read it. Okay, so what is left? Left are my 5-star books. So Yotsuba Volume 9 was probably my least favorite out of the Yotsuba books that I read. But if you haven't read Yotsuba yet and you like slice of life / contemporaries, please read these. These are phenomenal, my favorites. I love them so much. All of them. And then the next 2 would be The Woman Who Smashed Codes. I ended up really enjoying. This is a nonfiction book about Elizabeth Smith. She ends up marrying William Friedman. So Elizabeth Smith Friedman, and she is just so fascinating. She was she broke the enigma in America and helped America, like, win World War II. And she was very much involved in, like, what was happening in South America during World War II. Am I disconnected? What's going on? Can you guys hear me? Did you lose me for a little bit? You feel like I flew through that faster than most nonfiction you read. Yeah, I do tend to spread out my nonfiction, and part of that... Nope, it's been fine. Okay, because it said that I disconnected for a little bit and then reconnected. It is true that I do, like, tend to stretch out my nonfiction. Sometimes I do just read it in, like, 2 big sittings, but most of the time I do like to stretch it out just because I like thinking about it in between and stuff like that. Like, I like doing that, and I also only like listening to it in the morning usually because that's when my brain is most awake and, like, is fresh, and I feel like at nighttime I just, like, can't concentrate on it. But this one I just, like, couldn't put down. She was just so cool, and the stuff she did was absolutely incredible, and I just, like, I loved her and her husband. It's a love story, and I really, really liked it. It just came out in paperback in America, like, 2 weeks ago or so, so if you want to go get it, I really recommend it. The audiobook was also really good, and it's a new favorite, and I'm excited to reread this in the future. Yeah, she was so cool, and her husband were just, like, so interesting, and they were just, like, the things that they did are incredible, and, like, nobody knows about them. Well, not nobody knows about them, but, like, they weren't allowed to talk about them, like, forever, so she didn't talk about anything for so long. It is wonderful. And yay, Lizzie submitted her survey. Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys, thanks for taking the time to do this. I'm really excited about it. Okay, The Ghost in the Big Brass Bed by Bruce Coville. This is the 3rd book in the Nina 1011 series. I've been rereading the series over the past couple months, so I just reread this one. This is the last book in the series, and I love this series. It definitely has its problems. It's definitely dated. It's definitely, like, very, like, 80s, I think is when this book comes out. Oh, 91. So it's very definitely, like, of that era. Some of the terminology that they use and things like that, it's, like, not great. But I loved it. I love her. I love her dad. I love just everything about this, and on top of just, like, loving the characters and everything, the story is so interesting. And, like, reading this book as a kid, I was like, I read it and I was like, wow, and it made me want to go, like, read stuff about what this book is about, because it's about, like, right after World War I and the influenza epidemic and the, like, the repercussions of war and war propaganda during the war and just, like, all this stuff. It was just so interesting, and about art and about, like, enjoyable art versus, like, great art and just, like, all these things. It was so fascinating to me as a kid, and it was, again, so fascinating to me as an adult, and it makes me want to go read more books set right after World War I. It's just so interesting. I just like it, and I recommend reading the series if you're interested at all. I think this did go down in my enjoyment. Not that I didn't love it, and not that it's not a 5-star book, but I think I love book 1 more. I think it's 1, 3, then 2. Initially, I thought it was, like, 3, 1, then 2. I think it's 1, 3. I really, really love 1, and I think the humor in 1 is just so perfect, but I still really like this, and it was great. You're listening to my stream. And working. You never stop working, girl. Should I go over them all at the end of the stream? I have a Letterboxd. I don't think I've looked at it in like 3 years. But I do have one. And he has one. I don't think he updates it though. I don't know. I don't watch enough movies to need one. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I watch maybe like 3-4 movies a year. If that. And most of the movies that I do watch are just like rewatches. So it's not really worth it for me, but I have one. I just never use it. Okay. And now we're getting into like the wonderful, amazing, incredibleness or whatever. So NEWTs volume 7 and 8, I loved, and I loved rereading them, and this was just such a great experience. I didn't know you could mention people in reviews. Oh, just as a recommended to. Oh, that's so cool. Sorry, it popped up on my Goodreads and I was like, wait, what's going on? Oh, good, we're friends. Sorry. Alright, so. I didn't know, I've never even tried to do that before. That's so interesting. I don't know what this hair is doing right now. I feel like I've tried TV time as well before, like maybe in the past like 8 months or so, like my sister told me about it, but I just don't watch TV enough either. It's like, why is my face there? Sorry. I was just like, I said that I was mentioned. It said, Sarah mentioned you in their review. And I'm like, how do you mention people in Goodreads reviews? What's going on? But finally, my very top 2 most favoritist books. Sorry, I'll move you over. Most favoritist books that I read this month. Okay. I wish Diana was here to hear this, but maybe she'll watch it later. I love The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald. I love it, 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 love it. It's so good. You guys are probably like, oh my gosh, Giselle, in your last live stream you were like, I hate The Princess and the Goblin. I don't want to reread it. Blah, 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 blah. I loved it so much. That's smart, Sarah. That makes sense. A lot of series unfinished. It is easier to finish, like, TV series, though. Unless they're forever long. So, The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald. This is the first book in the Princess Irene and Curdie series. It's one of the first fantasy books, 1872. It's really feminist. The female characters drive the plot. The female characters do everything on their own. The female characters, like, are the reason that everyone is alive and not dead. Like, they're competent, they're awesome, they're so engaging. I loved the writing. It was so fascinating. Again, it had some of those, like, quirks where it's like, it's older fantasy. These authors could do whatever they want. There's no, like, ground rules or anything. So it's like, or just some of the things that, like, were said or happened. I was like, this is so funny that, like, this is in a fantasy book, where I feel like never you would see this in a fantasy book. Like, in what, like, fantasy book nowadays is a goblin gonna have a prime minister? And, like, it's just, like, it's so interesting to read these, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm so excited to read the second book. I just adored this, and I loved everything about it. Her grandma's awesome. Irene's awesome. The only time she needs, like, help from somebody who isn't her grandmother is when nobody's telling her what's going on. Nobody's letting her know that there's, like, goblins sneaking around and trying and, like, killing people and stuff. Like, nobody's telling her anything, so she doesn't know. As soon as she knows what's going on, she, like, takes control. She's competent. She takes care of herself. When she feels like she's in danger, she gets herself out of danger. She's just, like, so great. And Curdie was kind of a brat, and I hated him for a lot of it, because he's, like, a jerk, and he thinks that he's, like, better than her in a lot of ways. But he also realizes when he's been wrong, and he, like, admits when he's wrong. He admits when he's been a prick. He admits when he's, like, done these things. And I thought I really liked it. I don't know. I just loved it, you guys. I loved it. And it makes me really excited to rewatch the movie, because I'm not sure if the movie's good at all, but I'm really excited about it. And I really liked it. So please read it. And yeah, the book 2, so this has a 4-star rating, and this has a 4.06 rating, so it's very similar reading. This one has, like, a lot less ratings, though, which is fine. And it makes me want to go read all of his books now. Like, after I read this one, I want to work my way through everything he's written, because this book is phenomenal. Okay. Finally, a spinning silver by Naomi Novik. Standalone Rumpelstiltskin retelling that I loved so much. It's about 3 main female characters. It's like pre-1400s. I think it's around 1400s, but like pre-1400s is like my guess on the time period, like Russia or the Russian area. And I adored it. It's like feminist. It was awesome. It had like very you keep losing me and have to sign out and come back in. Is anyone else having problems at all? Because I feel like I have pretty good internet right now. Oh, I'm sorry, Lizzie. But this book was just like so great. So like again, it doesn't have like black and white characters and stuff like that. Like, I loved that, like, the main characters did have, like, darkness in them, did have a little bit of twistedness, did have, like, a not, like, perfect, like, sweetness and lovingness and stuff like that. Like, Miriam was wonderful. I loved... My favorite character ended up being a character that I did not think I was gonna like when she was first introduced. Her first chapter, I was just like... But I loved all of them. I wish I remembered her name. Miriam, Wanda, what was the last girl's name? Oh, I'm so bad. I can't believe don't remember this. Actually, I can believe that. Irina. I should, because it's very similar to The Princess and the Goblin. Irina ended up being my favorite character. I loved her and the things she did and the smarts, and it was just like, this is the perfect fairy tale retelling. This is perfection. And I think it's very much a fairy tale retelling that can appeal to a lot of people, because the first third of it is literally just historical fiction. Like, it doesn't, maybe has like a slight vibe of magic to it, but it's just historical fiction. And so I feel like with that first third, it can grip people who don't like fantasy, and then like everyone can enjoy it. Like, I got my sister to read this. She was like, Giselle, I don't like fantasy, and I'm like, read this book, I think you'll really like it. And she did, and she really liked it. My sister read it in like less than 24 hours. I hate her. Well, I love her. I love you. You're the best sister. But she watches all my live streams, like, post. I can't believe she did it. I'm like, how did you read this in one day? You're the worst, except for the best, except for the worst. I'm like, how have you read so much this year? But she is wonderful. I love you, sister. Anyway, all of the females in this are wonderful. All the characters are wonderful. I would say the biggest flaw of this book is that it can get a little bit confusing, because she switches points of view within chapters, and she switches points of view without letting you know who it's switching to. So it will take you a second to like acclimate to like who the character is and figure that out. But then once you do, I was like very engrossed all the time, but it can be jarring and pull you out. But my tip for that is listen to the audiobook, because the narrator's great, and I feel like I could always tell who the person was like based on the narration, so it would just take me a second. I'm like, okay, it's this character now, okay, it's this character now. But I was very thrown off on the audio for like the first like little bit, because I was like, who's talking, but besides that, I just loved this. Elizabeth didn't like it. She tried the audio and the physical, and she doesn't recommend, but I loved it, and it's one of my favorite fairy tale retellings of all time now. I'll probably reread this in a year or two, maybe sooner. And I would like to reread this, and I'd like to reread my 2 other favorite fairy tale retellings and see where this like falls. But I adored it, and I really recommend it. You did my list, thank you. So yeah, those are the books I read this month. So now as a little bit of a wrap up. So if you can see, out of all the books that I really enjoyed this month, in my top 11, all of them were rereads except for 3. I'm gonna count that as 4 though, because even though The Princess and the Goblin was a reread for me, it was also, I'd read it so long ago and I hated it, and I had such a completely like polar opposite experience to the first time that I read it when I really didn't like it. Let's say 4. So it's like, yes, I loved a lot of the things that I read, but yes, I already knew that I loved them, and I was just rereading them because I loved them. See, I felt like all the characters were very distinct. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of like, I don't know. It's just like, it can be a little bit disappointing like looking at this and being like, well, if I took out all my rereads, I only found like 2 absolutely new like favorite books, and then like 1 book that I really, really liked and I think can become a favorite. But then at the same time, there are like a lot of 3 stars and 4 stars that I really liked. So I do like my 3 stars. If it's a 3-star book, I'm happy that I've read it. And then out of all of these, 5 of them were graphic novels. So I don't know, not that reading a graphic novel or a manga is cheating, but it also like makes me feel better when I'm like reading like actual books, just for the fact that it's more impressive, I guess. It's easier, but it's like, it's harder to read like real books, but I love the graphic novels that I read for the most part, and I love them, and like obviously the Yotsuba books are some of my favorites, so like I just thought it was an interesting stat. So in total, I rated 127.5 stars. I distributed those over 40 books, which averaged my rating out to about 3.2 stars. So it is over, and it is generally positive, but that's still like pretty low for considering like how many 5-star books I had. It's just kind of sad. And then my average pages, I read 10,300 pages, which averaged out to be about 330 pages per day, which is pretty good. Not pretty good, that's excellent. I would love my average rating of pages per day for the year to be like 250, and I think it definitely probably will be if I keep having months like this. And then hours listened to was 263, which averaged out to be 8.4 hours a day, which is really good as well. That was higher than what I expected it to be. And in total, I listened to 10 fantasy, 10 urban/paranormal fantasy, 9 contemporaries, 7 historical fictions, 2 science fictions, 1 nonfiction, and 1 that was like multiple genres, which was the short story collection. 21 adult books, 10 middle grade, because I count Yotsuba as middle grade. 7 young adult books, which is very high. I don't normally read that many young adults, and 2 kids books. And then 5 of those were graphic novels/manga, 4 DNFs, and 8 rereads. So yeah, that's everything I read. And I'm very happy with it. I got all of my NEWTs, all 36, and I'm very happy about that. I'm not going to plan my reading this week. I am reading Bleak House by Charles Dickens, which is very long, and reading The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is also pretty long. So I'm just going to take those slow this week. I really am not in the mood to read or push myself to read or anything like that. Not because the readathon was so intense, but just because I'm just not enjoying reading right now. Like, I'm not enjoying, like, pushing myself to read right now, which is fine. I deserve a break. So I am instead going to just, like, read those books at the pace that I feel like, very leisurely, and then see how I feel, like, in a few days or in a week or whatever. And when I feel like starting to read again, I will. Hopefully in a week I'll be fine with reading again, because the 17th is when Contemporary-a-thon starts, and I really want to participate in Contemporary-a-thon. But I've kind of nixed everything else on my TBR for now, and I'm just, like, focusing on books that I'm really in the mood for, which right now are Bleak House and The Fellowship of the Ring. Thank you, Lizzie. Yeah, I'm very proud of myself. I could have finished earlier than I did. I finished on the 31st. Like, I made it just, like, barely. I could have finished earlier, but I didn't even read for, like, 3 days of the readathon at the end. I was just, like, in such a slumpy mood. But I'm very happy with what I read, and, like, this is how I can get through a book a day, as I just go crazy. But I also don't have kids, I don't have responsibilities, like, I just work, and then I can read. I don't have to, like, make sure Chris is staying alive, and feeding him, and make sure he's functioning and stuff, like, none of that. He can take care of himself, so if I close myself off and just, like, read, it's fine. So anyway, I had a pretty freaking good reading month, though, and I'm very, very happy with it, and I'm very glad about it as well. So I think that's interesting. Like, I'm reading less historical fiction than I used to. I'm reading a lot more, like, paranormal / urban fantasy than I used to. Reading a lot more, like, young adult and middle grade than I used to. DNFing less than I'd like, but rereading a lot more. Like, I'm having fun with it. Less nonfiction than I'd like, but also with a readathon, I didn't want to, like, I just wasn't in the mood for nonfiction, so I'm like, I'm not going to read it. I'm sorry my chair is so squeaky. It needs to stop. Okay. Oh gosh, there's 7 responses. Y'all are amazing. Thank you. So there's individuals, so I can kind of, like, see, like, who answered what a little bit more. And this. Okay. Every Hearted Doorway. You thought it was unremarkable. The Final Empire. Ask Me About My Uterus, which I'm very interested in. The Final Empire. Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. I do have that on hold from the library, so I'll probably get to it in about a month. Wool. I wonder if this was Lizzie. From Lizzie Fayetteville's books. The Best School Year Ever. I do want to get to that one. I think that would be fun for Contemporary-a-thon. And plus the 3rd book in that series is Halloween themed, so I'm like, if I get to this one now, then I can get to the Halloween themed one, and it would be perfect. Dead Mountain and Scarlet. Oh gosh, who's trying to make me read Scarlet? How did you know? Because it seems like something you would try to get me to read. Which, like, don't get me wrong, I love The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, but it just seems like something you would try to make me read. Okay. One unread book off of my Goodreads. Any TBR shelf. Fahrenheit 451. Oh, I definitely wasn't planning on reading that anytime soon. Sleeping Giants definitely wasn't planning on reading that. Every Hearted Doorway. So 2 different people recommended that book. That's fine. I guess I really need to get to that one. Yotsuba Volume 13. Okay. I need to reread the rest of the volumes first, but okay. Kiss of Deception. I have been in the mood for that recently, but I'm also scared to pick it up. Read, Write, Love at Seaside. Sweet Okay. The Book Thief. I remember when you recommended this to me. The Book Thief. Oh, I'm scared to do that. But if any time to read that, it's wintertime. The Importance of Being Earnest. Oh, I want to reread that. Yes. Oh. I hate Ron and Harry. And I was just so sick of them. I hate all the characters in that book, pretty much. It just made me want to punch all of them. The only people worth reading that book for is Hermione and, like, Dobby. And that's it. It was making me so mad. I mean, I've read it. Like, I've probably read it, like, 10 times at least before. But this last reread, I just couldn't. If you want to choose another book, go for it, though, because there's not a freaking chance I'm rereading that anytime soon. I was so frustrated. Plus, I said prior to 2016, and I'm pretty sure I read that last year. Another TBR book, The Book Thief. Okay, so I got that one twice. Ella Enchanted. Yes, I haven't read that since 2016. I definitely do need to reread that. Ooh, Redwall. That's a good one. The Hunger Games are Matched. Okay, so I'm definitely not going to reread Matched. But I would consider rereading The Hunger Games because I really didn't care for it when I first read it. Redwall, I am really in the mood to reread Mossflower. But it would be interesting to reread Redwall after reading Mossflower. The Little Princess or Soulless. I don't think I'll get to Soulless until I finish the series, but I would love to reread it once I finish the series, which I have 2 books left, and so I'm currently rereading the manga volume 3, and then I'm going to read 4 and 5, and then I'd love to go back and reread number 1 again, because I loved it so much, and I wonder if I still would. You're going to read the 3rd one in October, too. They're so funny. They are really funny. The Herdmans are. Okay. Oh, this one's long. It's lengthy. Nice. Okay. You're going to cheat with 4. Okay. The Last of the Really Great Winged Doodles by Julie Andrews Edwards. This is by Julie Andrews, right? That's what I thought. Who did I just hear talking about this? Maybe Kaylee? Was Kaylee just talking about this? Maybe? Okay, so Elizabeth is obviously the one that recommended this. No, it wasn't Kaylee. I feel like somebody's talked about this recently. I do own it, though. So this will be one that I can physically read if I need to. Maybe one of you were talking about this. Okay, so it is by Julie Andrews. Okay. All right. Awesome. I need to add this to my TBR anyway, because I didn't have it marked on there. But I own it. Yay. I don't want to say that wrong. Is it Raqqa Diaries? Escape from the Islamic State of Samar. Samar? I don't know. I'm so bad at pronouncing stuff. Really eye-opening and moving. Being Santa Claus. What I Learned About the True Meaning of Christmas by Sal Lizard. I'm not sure if I know what this is. I don't think I do. I don't know what this is. It looks cute. Santa Seers Revealed. Sorry. I guess this is just you telling me read all the Christmas books now. It doesn't matter that it's September. His Flying Reindeer and Other Wonders. That sounds cute. really imaginative. That sounds right up my alley. Oh, that's fun. Okay, I'm really excited about this one because it is. It's making you choose other things that, like, I wouldn't have heard of necessarily. Burial rites. I did stick that on my to-read list of 2018, but I don't think I'm going to get to it. But I do want to read it. It's just helping you plan your December a little early. It's fine. Okay. I'm definitely interested. Okay. I don't know if I'll read Six It Grows right away because I do want to read Grisha first, but I was planning on getting to Grisha sometime in the next year. But I'll definitely try to pick up Burial Rites. Okay. Paper Planes. I wonder who recommended that. Winter Spell. I think I know which book this is. Isn't this like a bit of a retelling as well? Isn't this like goblins? Or is this a different book? Maybe I'm thinking of a different book. Or is there a different cover? Maybe I'm thinking of... Oh, I'm thinking of a completely different book. I don't know what book I'm thinking of then. But it is a fairy tale retelling. Okay, so at least I was right on that. It sounds like a fairy tale retelling. Okay. I do love my fairy tales. Heartless. I'm very interested to read Heartless, but I'm also scared. Subterranean. I think I own Subterranean. I'm like 98% sure. Yeah, I definitely own Subterranean. Or I did. I hope I didn't get rid of it, but I think I still own it. Let me check. Yeah, I still own this. Okay. In case you're wondering how I'm checking if I own stuff, this is me. This is Chris and my mutual account. That's just like all the books that we own. I want to read this because of Lindsay. I want to read any of his books because of Lindsay, so I'm definitely interested in reading that. Okay. And The Book Thief. Oh my gosh. Stop with The Book Thief. Stop it. Your favorite book that you've ever read. Which I know this one came across confusing, so if you put a weird response in and you want to change it now, just let me know here or message me and I will take that into account. Flowers for Algernon. I know this is on a lot of like banned books list because I was just looking at them. But I don't think I know much about it really. I don't think I know anything about it, but I will try it. I will try it. Yeah, I don't know anything about it. Okay, so I'll try the novel. So this second one, if you want to change this, you totally can. Otherwise, I did just reread Pride and Prejudice. I do really want to reread Alice in Wonderland, though. And Through the Looking Glass, because they're wonderful. Angel Fall by Susan E. I think I own this on Audible. Let me check that. I'm pretty sure I own this on Audible. I do own this on Audible, so that will be super easy for me to get to. Okay. Okay. And I never got to it. Eliza and Her Monsters. I know I need to read this. I need to read it. I'm sorry. I'll get to it. It doesn't exist on audio, though, which makes me mad. Anne of Green Gables. Okay, I'm going to request that you change that if you want to, because I won't be rereading it immediately because I'm actually planning on reading the third book soon, and I'm going to continue on with the series from there. But if you want to choose a different book, go for it. Otherwise, I'll just continue on with the series, so it sort of counts. Bats. I feel like you were telling me about this one. It doesn't have to be like an all-time favorite book. Just like, I mean, the number one all-time favorite book. It could just be like a favorite book. Oh gosh, it's a horror book. A frightening tale about a swarm of vampire bats that have developed a taste for human blood. Oh dear. Well, I'm not afraid of bats, so I feel like this hopefully won't be too scary. Okay, let's try it. Who knows? I will try it. I wonder if this is on Audible. Let's just try William Johnson. Is this the red author? Did you just write westerns and then like one horror book? Okay. I mean, I'll try it. Looks like I'll have to physically read it, but I'll try it. And maybe physically reading it will make it less scary. Because scary books, if I'm listening to scary audiobooks, I don't know if anybody else has this. If I'm listening to something that like gets too intense or is just too emotional or whatever or too scary, my hands start to hurt. Does anyone else have that where it's like my fingers start to hurt? I don't know if it's like if I'm like losing like circulation or just like over circulation or whatever, but like does anyone else have that? Because like that's how reading horror makes me feel. It makes me feel like my hands start hurting. And I don't know if it's like psychological, like I don't know what it is. Nope. You're like, that doesn't happen to me. He wrote Western and horror. Okay. I'll try it. I promised I'd try it. I'll try it. Okay. Lord of the Rings. I'm currently rereading Fellowship. I need to reread Graceling, so I'm very interested in that. The Book Thief. Stop freaking recommending The Book Thief. That's like the 5th time. The Copper Promise. I think I know what this book is. To name a few. Maybe I don't know what this book is. Never mind, I don't know what this book is. Okay. Let's try it. The next book and book is fine. I don't want you to reread it. Yeah, so I've read the first 3 and the last 2, but I never read 4, 5, and 6. So I want to... So I reread book 1 and book 2. I'm going to reread book 3 soon, and then I was going to read 4, 5, and 6 for the first time, and then reread 7 and 8. So that's what's happening. That's just a favorite book that you've read. But Lizzie Faye, what's your favorite book that you've ever read? Not just that I've read, that you've ever read. That's my question. Or another way to interpret that question. Oh, it's okay. I'll try Bats. It might make me feel less, like, intimidated reading it as well, because, like, I feel like if Chris hears that I'm reading a Stephen King book, he's gonna go... And maybe starting with something not Stephen King will make him, like, calm down. Lizzie doesn't like The Book Thief. I'm really afraid I won't like The Book Thief. Fanny Flagg. Ooh, I know who Fanny Flagg is. Who is she? She wrote that one book with the blue cover that has the town on it that just came out, right? That's who Fanny Flagg is, right? Don't you know which book I'm talking about? It came out like a little over a year ago. Blue cover, yeah, okay. Okay, the whole town's talking. Okay, I know who this author is, but I've never read anything by her. I'm so good with books. A Redbird Christmas. Okay, y'all need to calm down with the Christmas books. Just kidding. Don't. Okay, I'll mark this one. Oh, she wrote fried green tomatoes, not potatoes. Fried green tomatoes. That's so interesting. I've never read anything by her. All right. I'll try it. I know nothing about this book. And The Book Thief. When I Hit You. But don't read it first. Okay, I won't. I was gonna read the other book that you said is your favorite, A Redbird Christmas. What? Fiction, feminist, cultural India. Those all sound up my alley, except for the poetry part. I'm not a big poetry person, but I'll try it. Okay. It was the first one of his you ever read. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely try it. I wasn't sure exactly, so I have like Amazonia or whatever it's called on my list, but I don't really care where I start. That's just the one that I remember like Lindsay like freaking out about and being like, I loved this so much. Which is why he's on my list, but I've never actually gotten to him. Along with like all of her other favorite authors, like Brandon Sanderson and Scott Lynch and Joe Abercrombie and all of those like that I've never gotten to. So I'm glad to finally be getting to some of Lindsay's favorite authors. She's a poet, but it's not poetry. Okay, good. Because I don't know how I feel about reading poetry. Something in the Water. Catherine Stis. Is that what it is about? It starts with an ST, right? Don't you love my little book facts? Stedman. Redbird Christmas starts and ends at Christmas, but there's a whole year in between. Plus it is a standalone. Okay, well, might as well read it at Christmas time though, right? Okay. Oh good, I'm excited. And like hearing you guys talk about like why you love these books and why you recommend these books and stuff like that makes me super excited about this. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make like a little TBR jar, write them all in there. I'm only going to write The Book Thief once. That's not fair. But I think it'll be fun and it will be a bit of a challenge, and I don't know. I can't guarantee that I'll get to them all like right away, but it's like definitely like put them on my radar and made me interested in them. Oh good. This is so great. I'm really excited. Some of you saw on my Instagram stories, I was doing an Instagram live, a couple of them, and I was just like, I'm not enjoying reading right now, so I did a bit of try a chapter of like five books that I'm just like really in the mood for right now, and I'm rereading some old favorites. Like I'm currently rereading like Much Ado About Nothing and other things like that, and I just started rereading Rowan Hood by Nancy Springer and things like that, and it's just like it's putting me back in like a reading mood. Plus like the weather outside is so gloomy, and it's supposed to be back up to 80 on like Tuesday, but like I'm sure you could tell from the lighting, but just like look at how depressing it is outside. I love it. It's like so dark and glum, and it just like makes me want to like read and curl up, and it's so cold in the apartment. Like we're both wearing long sleeves. I have like this big sweater like shawl thing on me. Chris is like bundled up in the blanket. Like it's really cold and like it's just like putting me in the mood to like read like long folly books and stuff. You think you're the only one that didn't put down The Book Thief, because that's one book you're not going to read. Yeah, and Chris has been trying to make me read The Book Thief as well. I'll read it, but I can't guarantee that I'll be able to make it through it. I think it might make me like too depressed. It's the perfect time for horror and thrillers. I don't know about that. I don't know if anyone likes this, but I am going to be reading The Cuckoo's Calling, or attempting to be reading The Cuckoo's Calling during Contemporary-a-thon. We'll see how it goes. But that's one of the books. So basically, Chris challenged me. He gave me a list of 3 books to read by the end of the year. Mistborn, Cuckoo's Calling, and Pendragon are them. So I'm going to start with The Cuckoo's Calling, and then we'll read Mistborn together, and then I'll fit Pendragon in sometime in like November or something. You didn't put The Book Thief either. Okay. So, like, 2 people didn't. Thanks, guys. Seriously, it's ridiculous. Is the BBC adaptation good of The Cuckoo's Calling? I just know that Chris has seen, like, the pictures of the actors and stuff, and he's like, these look like none of them. This makes me really mad. He's like, that's not what Cormoran looks like. I'm like, oh, sorry. Makes sense, Elizabeth. Dyslexic Muggle Elizabeth, not the other 3 Elizabeths in here. I don't know if it would bother me, as long as it's done in an interesting manner. You gave up on The Book Thief because you didn't want to cry your heart out. Yeah, I understand that. I might do that too, honestly. But at least if I try it, then I'll know. Like, I've read, like, the first, like, chapter before, but, like, if I really, like, give it a good solid try and decide it's not for me, then at least I'll know, and people will stop pestering me about it. How dare you guys fill out the form that I asked you to fill out and give me your honest recommendations. You should be ashamed of yourselves. I did end up making, there's not a lot left, but I did end up making homemade jerky on my day off on Friday. I like my jerky to be, like, crunchy and tough. And so it is. This is how it's supposed to be. This is the texture of jerky that I like. Okay, so later today, I'll go through all of these. I'll write them down on little bits of paper, unfold them up, and I'm excited. This is going to be just, like, so fun and, like, so invigorating. That makes sense, especially as someone who reads a lot of, like, nonfiction and stuff all about it already. I can understand that this little, like, young adult book might not add much to that for you. Totally reasonable. But, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't know. I'm happy with the reading that I've been doing, but I think I'm really going to try to slow down in September. I'm currently 13 books ahead on my Goodreads challenge, so even if I didn't read anything for 2 weeks, I wouldn't be behind. Which I will be reading things over the next 2 weeks, just slowly. And I think if I just take the time to just, like, read the books that I'm really in the mood for, even if they're, like, longer or slower, or if I only read a little bit every day, I think it will just, like, put me in the mood. And then I'm almost always in the mood for, like, contemporary books. I don't know why my Goodreads not loading. I'm almost always in the mood for contemporary books. Like, I've been super in the mood for contemporary books almost all year. So then Contemporary-a-thon will be, like, a nice, like, pick it back up the pace and try to, like, read a ton of books in that 1 week. I also just like reread Howl's Moving Castle, which I love. It makes me in the mood to like go and reread House of Many Ways. I always skip the middle book. I don't really care for it, but I don't know, it's just like good stuff. Yay, I'm reading The Cook with Collin. Yes. Yeah. And like, it doesn't take much for me to cry during a book or a movie. I like cry during books pretty often. So I would not be surprised if it makes me cry, but I don't know if I'll love it or not. Anyway. I don't know if there's anything else. I don't know what to talk about. I've run out of stuff. I'm also caught up on my sister's book club, so I don't have to read anything for that for like the next week or whatever. Another thing is I want to finish filling out this list. I've done like the first like 30 authors so far. But these are all authors that I've really loved books from, and I've really enjoyed the work that I've read by them. With some exceptions that like maybe I liked some and didn't like some, but like I want to try other things by them. And I think I'm going to go through, make it, and use a random generator and try to like pull books. Or try pull these authors and try to read the books. And like, these are authors that I want to read like all the books from. And Victober's happening next month, and I'm already like have made my TBR, and I'm very excited about Victober. Which, yeah, I'm already interested in reading Ask Me About My Uterus. I think it sounds very fascinating. So, and important to read, so. I'm kind of scared to read Roald Dahl, though, because I loved him as a kid, but I don't know if I'll love him anymore because he wasn't the greatest person. And some of the things he does and says, I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm really enjoying my jerky. It's just, this is the way my grandma used to make it. My grandma, my grandpa. And so eating it just makes me think of like being at their house, and they lived up in Utah. It was always like way colder there, so it makes me think of like winter and coldness and jerky and deliciousness, and like it makes me think of my grandparents. Anyway, I think that's it for today. So thank you guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me and for taking the time to fill this out. I know it's a little bit extensive, but I really, really do appreciate it, and I think it's so fun and awesome that you guys did that, and I'm like really can't wait. It's making me feel like more excited about reading again because I've like lost that a little bit in the past week. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me for 2.5 hours, almost 3, and hopefully I'll be back with another live stream next week, and y'all are the best, and I wouldn't be doing this and having these awesome conversations without all of you coming every week and talking to me and supporting me for so long and many years and everything. Okay. Anyway, I will see you all in my next live stream, or hopefully my next vlog will be up before I live stream next, but anyway. Bye everyone.